recent weeks, colleges across the country have become the site of mass protests against Israel's war in Gaza.
Tonight at University of Texas Austin, police one by one detaining pro-Palestinian protesters.
In June 2024, college campuses worldwide became centers of passionate activism and protest. Among the many voices raised in these demonstrations, the pro-Palestine protests stood out for their intensity and widespread participation. These protests were a response to recent escalations in Gaza, which had captured global attention and sparked a wave of solidarity among students. As tensions flared overseas, students in the US, France, the UK, Italy, Australia, and many other countries mobilized to demand their universities divest from companies supplying weapons to Israel. They called for greater transparency and ethical considerations in their institutions' investments. The campuses buzzed with activity as rallies, sit-ins, and encampments became common sights. This video sets the stage for understanding the motivations behind these protests. It explores why so many students felt compelled to act and what they hope to achieve by taking a stand for Palestine on their college campuses. To understand the pro-Palestine protests of June 2024, we need to look back at the history of similar movements on college campuses. The pro-Palestine movement has been active for decades, often driven by student organizations advocating for Palestinian rights. These movements have roots in the broader history of student activism in the US, where college campuses have long been hotbeds for social and political change. In the 1960s and 70s, students rallied against the Vietnam War and for civil rights, setting a precedent for future movements. In the early 2000s, pro-Palestine groups began to form more prominently, particularly after the Second Intifada, which was a period of intensified Israeli-Palestinian violence. Students organized protests, educational events, and boycott, divestment, and sanctions BDS campaigns. These efforts aimed to pressure their universities to withdraw investments from companies that were seen as complicit in the Israeli occupation of Palestinian territories. One notable example is the Students for Justice in Palestine, or SJP, which was founded in 2001 at the University of California, Berkeley. SJP chapters quickly spread across the country, advocating for human rights and social justice for Palestinians. These groups often faced opposition, but persisted in their efforts to raise awareness and effect change on their campuses. Fast forward to 2024, and the situation in Gaza once again ignited global and national sentiments. In the spring of 2024, the conflict in Gaza escalated dramatically, leading to widespread devastation and a significant loss of life. Images and reports of the violence flooded social media and news outlets, evoking strong reactions worldwide. The violence in Gaza wasn't just a distant conflict, it resonated deeply with many people, particularly students who saw parallels between the struggles in Gaza and other social justice issues they cared about. As the conflict intensified, student groups across the United States mobilized quickly. Social media played a crucial role in this rapid organization, allowing students to coordinate protests, share information, and amplify their messages. The hashtags Free Palestine and Divest from War trended widely, drawing attention to the cause and encouraging more students to join the movement. The protests on college campuses were not just about Gaza, they were also about broader issues of human rights, social justice, and institutional accountability. Students demanded that their universities divest from companies that supplied weapons to Israel, arguing that their institutions should not be profiting from violence and conflict. They also called for greater transparency in how university funds were being invested, pushing for ethical investment policies that aligned with their values. These protests were part of a larger wave of activism that swept across the nation in June 2024. Students from diverse backgrounds and ideologies came together, united by their desire to make a difference and stand in solidarity with Palestine. The pro-Palestine protests were a statement to the power of student activism and the impact that passionate, dedicated individuals can have on important global issues. As we delve deeper into the events of June 2024, we will explore the specific incidents and actions that define this period of intense activism. From the organization and leadership of the protests to the responses from universities and authorities, we will uncover the many facets of this significant movement. Understanding the historical context and recent catalysts helps us grasp the motivations behind these protests and the powerful force of student activism in advocating for justice and change. Pro-Palestinian demonstrations, which have been making waves on college campuses in the United States, are now spreading globally, reaching cities such as London, Paris, Rome, Sydney, Tokyo, and Beirut. In France, Prime Minister Gabriel Attal's office reported that police were dispatched to clear student protests from 23 university campuses on Thursday. All protests were reportedly dispersed within a few hours, as confirmed by Attal's office. This move aligns with the approach of President Emmanuel Macron, who, like Attal, is an alumnus of Sciences Po. In the United Kingdom, the number of campus protests is increasing. Ella Ward, a 21-year-old environmental science student at the University of Leeds, expressed that witnessing the demonstrations at Columbia University and other American institutions inspired students at Leeds. Around 50 students at Leeds began their own encampment on Wednesday, according to Ward, who represents Youth Demand, a student group advocating for a bilateral arms embargo on Israel. Although she did not organize the demonstration, Ward supported the initiative and hoped for its expansion. The issue of Palestine has awakened many of us, she said, noting the significance of ongoing mass demonstrations in the US, despite the risk of arrests and suspensions for participants. In recent days, several other UK universities, such as University College London, the University of Warwick, the Newcastle University, have also seen pro-Palestinian protests, as evidenced by social media photos and videos. A spokesperson from the University of Warwick stated that the protests are being managed in accordance with their legal obligations and commitment to ensuring freedom of speech on campus. In the US, some pro-Palestinian protests have faced allegations of anti-Semitism, which Jewish organizations claim is increasing amid the Israel-Hamas conflict, specifically targeting companies linked to the Israeli military. These announcements were seen as initial victories for the protesters, validating their efforts and raising awareness about the issue. However, the protests also led to significant arrests. Students from various universities were detained for actions ranging from trespassing to disorderly conduct. These arrests sparked debates about the right to protest and the role of law enforcement on college campuses, drawing attention to the broader issue of student activism and institutional response. Looking at the long-term implications, these protests could reshape university policies, making them more transparent and ethically accountable. The movement also energized student activism, creating a template for future protests. The collaboration between groups like Students for Justice in Palestine, SJP, and Jews for Justice, J4J, set a precedent for diverse coalitions working together towards common goals. As we conclude our exploration, it's clear that pro-Palestine protests of June 2024 were more than just events, they were a movement. This movement underscored the importance of student activism in advocating for justice and human rights. May Allah help all of us and the people of Palestine. Let's stand together and make this world a better place for everyone.